In order for laws to work, there must be consequences when they are broken. However, people strongly disagree about what should happen and what the aim of punishment should be. In UK courts, everyone is presumed to be innocent until they are proven guilty in court. At this point, the judge decides what should happen. Some people feel that punishment should be strict to deter people from committing crimes. Other people feel that this isn't effective because criminals are still very likely to re-offend after they've served their punishment. They need to be rehabilitated or reformed so that they change and do not want to commit crimes again. One possible aim of punishment is deterrence. This means to discourage someone from or put someone off from doing something that is against the law. If we see people being punished harshly, then we are less likely to commit the crime. For instance, if you came into school and saw lots of heads on spikes at the gates with signs saying, "This is what happens when you don't do your homework," you might be more likely to do your homework in future. Another strict aim of punishment is the idea of retribution or revenge. This is the idea that people should pay for their crimes to give the victim a sense of justice, or the victim's family. For instance, in the Bible it says, "Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth." And this suggests that if one person does something wrong, you should do the same thing back. Other people argue that the main aim of punishment is protection. It's not so much about the criminal, but rather the rest of society, and the aim of punishment should be to keep innocent members of society free from harm. Another possible aim of punishment is reform or rehabilitation. Some people think that punishment should help to reform prisoners, i.e. make them better. This means that it should help criminals to see what they have done wrong and make sure they do not do it again. This normally means that they should provide criminals with education and job training, as well as counselling, so they can become law-abiding citizens. You may have seen different initiatives that have taken place in the news. For instance, the Thriller video where they got lots of prisoners in the Philippines to reenact the Thriller dance scene was one way that they could spend their time, so they're actually doing something productive, or at least working as a team and gaining skills that they might not otherwise have. Other things that they've introduced include yoga and gardening, and both of these things have actually had an effect on how likely a person is to re-offend. Different countries have different types of punishments. For instance, in this country, the killers of Jamie Bulger were actually sentenced to a very long time in prison and were given new identities when they came out, but quickly went back in again. In other countries, such as the Scandinavian countries, you see a greater focus on reform. In the case of the murder of Silje Radegard, for instance, this girl here, her killers were never named. In fact, they were never put to prison. They were about the same age as these killers. However, the killers in the Scandinavian countries are often actually focused on reform. They may be punished not harshly at all, but instead placed in open prisons where they're given lots of education and support. In this case, it was felt that actually the boys deserved to be looked after by the community that had failed them, arguably, rather than actually be punished harshly. People then strongly disagree about what the aims of punishment should be. On the one hand, many people argue that deterrence and retribution just don't work. Nearly half of all prisoners commit crimes again. Countries with capital punishment, such as the USA and China, do not have lower crime rates. If anything, you could argue it creates a society of violence, which could increase the level of crime overall. On the other hand, people argue that the families deserve justice and can only really feel that if capital punishment or harsh punishments are served. When people like Saddam Hussein executed, for instance, most people feel that justice has been served. In the Bible it says eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, and in the Quran it also says life for a life. Other Christians and theists might argue that it's about forgiveness. Jesus, for instance, preached agape, Christian unconditional love. We should be helping criminals then by getting them better, giving them an education and counselling. You could also argue that many of them have had hard lives. They may have grown up in difficult circumstances and not have had the same opportunities as others. Other people would argue that educating them or letting criminals have yoga classes is hardly a punishment. People should be made to pay for what they have done and deterred from committing crimes again. You may be asked to evaluate both sides of the debate in a 6-mark question.